I've been part of a team that's gone on to win 3 in a row. It's crazy, really, and you kind of forget about it sometimes.
Like all the guys that I played with growing up through the years, like we're all still friends and everything. So it really is like it's a good family sense and a good community sense.
We had won in All Ireland in 97, 99, 2000. It's more local at your club. You know everyone, you know the setup. It's different than joining a county panel.
It was nearly like a kind of statement to say, we're here, we're ready to play. No one's going to push us over this year.
This podcast is sponsored by Declan Kirby GAA Star. Declan Kirby GAA Star is a children's GAA book written by primary school teacher and GAA coach Michael Egan. Follow the trials and tribulations of Declan Kirby and his team at Smithgreen Gaelic Football Club. The book is a very good read for any parents who are looking to get their children involved in Gaelic games. The book is available in Easons, Lidl and all good bookshops. It's also available to download on Amazon, so make sure to go and check it out. They're very good supporters of the channel and the page, so you'd certainly be doing me a good favour as well if you went ahead and checked the book out. So I do very much appreciate it. The link is in the description down below, and let's get straight into it. Okay, welcome back to the GAA Fan TV podcast. My name is Aaron. I hope everyone is keeping wonderfully well. I'm delighted to be joined here by Shane Stapleton of OurGame.ie, two-time All-Ireland winner with Cuala, of course, as well, and Tipperary native. Shane, how's life?
Thanks very much for having me on, Aaron. Doing well today, yeah. You know yourself, in the middle of the GAA season, kept going all the time.
Absolutely, yeah. You're keeping busy anyways. I think I was watching a few club games there in the Dublin Senior Football Championship not too long ago, and I was like, there you are again. Like, so you're keeping busy anyways.
Yeah, trying to keep between the two codes, and then sure, like so many county championships going on at the moment and so many brilliant stories going on, as you know only too well. But yeah, a bit of stuff going on with the Dublin GAA live channel, so that was great doing the quarterfinals of the Dublin football. Then I was down at the Tipperary semi-finals at the weekend in hurling, watching my native Ballyhale getting knocked out by Loughmore Castleiney. Very entertaining stuff. Like, you know yourself, the club stuff is nearly more dramatic, and the quality of intercounty is obviously that bit higher, and you know 70 minutes and all that kind of stuff. But like, it's very hard to beat club.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I've actually got some family down from Thurles actually, so I know they were fairly delighted anyway to get that victory over Killadangan. Like in fairness, like I think Killadangan were going in there as not necessarily huge favourites, but I think a lot of people probably had them as maybe the side to go and win the Tipperary Championship, considering the success that they had last year. So I suppose, and even like what you said with Ballyhale losing as well, like that seems like a championship that's wide open, really.
It is. It's great. Like, I had tipped Killadangan. Like, I tipped them heavily, not to win by much. I was like, puck of a ball here, I think Killadangan will beat Thurles, because they'd only lost one club championship game in the last 3 years in Tipperary. And I just thought they'd get it over the line, but Thurles put a nice bit of egg on my face, and I have cousins from SARS, and they let me know on the final whistle about it too. But Ballyhale just had a couple of injuries. Even my own brother went off injured after 15 minutes to compound the injuries they already had. Kevin Maher was suspended, and like Loughmore, a very good team. There was an inevitability that they were going to win during the second half, just the way they were playing. And all you can do is say fair play to them, they deserved it.
And considering like some of the heartbreak Loughmore had last year, like a Bocos, I suppose, losing both finals. I mean, going into the final now, like going up against a good Thurles Sarsfield side, no doubt about it. I mean, that should be a very competitive game. Like, who would you be tipping from here on in anyways, like kind of going into that final?
Yeah, it's really tough, like, because the way Thurles played, and they were fairly dominant against Killadangan, even though they won by 2 points, but they missed 22 scoring chances, and you're thinking, geez, that's going to be very hard for Loughmore to keep out. But it was such a physical game between Loughmore and Ballyhale, and you didn't see that in the Thurles game. And I wonder, are Loughmore going to sew it into Thurles? Will Brian McGrath be available for the game? Because that could be a great leveler. Like, he's a fantastic player that should have seen more game time with Tipperary by now. I really don't know, but like, Loughmore have been here, they've been close. The aura around Thurles isn't quite there, you know, when they were winning title after title. It's not quite there anymore. I'd say puck of a ball, and I probably would just lean to Thurles. If Brian McGrath is playing, then I really don't know. But at the moment, I'm just about leaning towards Thurles. They've kind of sewed it into me at the weekend there.
Absolutely, yeah. Like, and I suppose you mentioned obviously your native Ballyhale. getting beat, I suppose, a tough weekend in many ways then with Cuala's defeat to Kilmacud Crokes. Obviously a 5-point win in the end. Like, some performance from Kilmacud Crokes, no doubt about it. Like, the way they played, I thought was really impressive. But what was your immediate reaction to that loss anyways as a Cuala club man?
Yeah, I mean, chickens came home to roost. I mean, it was a really, like, so I was doing the review on our game yesterday, you know, a live show and all that kind of stuff. And you kind of have to pick your words carefully because, you know, you're close to a lot of people that are involved and you don't want people falling out with you over something you say. But to me, the chickens came home to roost. I didn't agree with the team selections. I didn't agree with the tactics. I couldn't figure out what the tactics were. Like, ball going into, like, first of all, based on the half back and midfield, I couldn't see how ball was going to be delivered into Con often enough to do damage. When he got the ball, the full back stood off him. The centre back came over to help out, so he was forced to take his points. But there was nobody coming running off the shoulder. I mean, that's where you miss having Mark Shuta there. He's injured. Colm Cronin, he's emigrated. Obviously, you miss Oisin Goff in the back, and Paul Shuta is retired. So, I mean, I've named 4 county quality players there, not to mention a Dublin under-20 and Liam Murphy, who had a broken thumb. But, like, where were the players running off the shoulder? But I would give full credit to Crokes. They've been so close so often since last winter in 2014. I'd say their heads are wrecked with not getting over the line. They have a lot of quality. Ronan Hayes is a very good player. Larkin McMullen, who they have. Dylan Mulligan is a warrior. Bill O'Carroll. They have very good players, Fergal Whiteley, throughout the field. But I look at Cuala and that performance and I say absolutely not good enough. But, like, I kind of seen this coming all year.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Like, because I suppose, like, they were in a tough group, no doubt about it, with Bridget's and Kilmacud Crokes. Like, and you seen even in the Bridget's game, like, I remember watching that game and, geez, Bridget's were very close to getting over the line that day. Like, obviously, Cuala only needed a draw to get out of the group, but I do remember Bridget's were winning there going down the home stretch. They came through that game. They played Ballybowden, obviously, in the quarterfinals, came through that game after extra time as well. Like, personally, I felt like they'd kick on and win it because they were kind of showing that steel and resolve that you see from a team that's used to winning county titles. But like what you said, fair play to Kilmacud Crokes. Like, they were by far the better side on the day. And even with that late Sean Moran goal, like, that probably just made the scoreline more respectable. Like, it was probably a comfortable win, really, for Kilmacud in the end.
Oh, it was for a finish. And, like, what you're saying, like, it's a fair assumption to think that you might stumble a little bit in the groups, but because you've won it so often before, that you'd be able to time it right. And we've definitely done that before. And Bridget's should have won that game. They should have. It's this whole thing, and it was inevitable that Cuala were going to steal it towards the end because he just butchered so many goal chances. And Bridget's should be kicking themselves for that. They really should. Like, it was a 15-point win for Crokes against Cuala the first day out. Then the next day, an easy win over Thomas Davis, I think. I mean, the club championship is going to be reduced to 10 teams, and unfortunately there are some teams that aren't quite able to compete at that level, and people can take that whatever way they like it. I mean, but the reality shows there's too many 40-point wins and 30-point wins in the Dublin championship. But then, yeah, Bridget should have won that game, and I thought maybe the Ballybowden game would be a turning point, because when you win a war, that's always, you know, that's huge for confidence. But again, I looked at team selection. I looked at, you know, how is this going to allow the ball to move up and down the field? Are players in the right position? And I was like, it just doesn't add up to me. And you know, the chickens came home to roost. And it's going to be big to see what happens ahead of next season, because you know, if you keep doing the same thing over and over, it's just not going to work. And but, like, the injuries were huge. If you throw Mark, Paul, well, Paul's obviously retired now, but Cronin is gone. But, like, even Mark and Oisin and Liam Murphy back into that team, that does change things.
Yeah, like, and I suppose there was a lot of hype, wasn't there, when Eddie Brennan came in as the manager, obviously, given, you know, what he's achieved as a player with Kilkenny and done a fairly tremendous job as well with Laois. So I suppose, like, it is his first season, is obviously a COVID year as well, and in some respects I know we're kind of coming out of COVID now, but would you still see him, I know you're very closely involved with the club, so I don't want to put you on the spot or anything, but would you still see him there for the next year or so, or would you expect to see maybe any changes or anything like that?
God, I wouldn't have a clue, actually. I would hope he would stay around, because I kind of couldn't stay hurling after, I think it was about June. I had a lot of injuries. There was a 3-week break and I was working relentlessly. And I don't know if you've ever, I'm not a person for taking daytime naps, but I was so tired from working, I was taking daytime naps. So I just couldn't go training at all. So I haven't trained since about June, but when he came in, I found his coaching to be very good. I think he had complete command of the dressing room straight away. Everyone's respect. Bit of crack as well. I mean, first training session, I came in dressed head to toe in Tipperary gear, and I could see him looking out of the corner of his eye, because obviously I've interviewed him over the years, so I've had a bit of crack with him before. So we had a bit of fun over that. But like I found him very good. Like, I wouldn't say there was. I mean, maybe outwardly people would look at it and think, "Oh, this is a big appointment." You know, Cuala have Eddie Brennan, but within the panel, we're so used to having the spotlight over the last 5 or 6 years that no one within the panel would have blinked an eye at that. It would have been like, right, we've Eddie Brennan now. Great. I mean, that's something to kind of focus minds or whatever. Good to have a good figurehead in there. But no, that wouldn't have bothered anybody. Yeah, I mean, as I said, there's other things at play there that probably cost the team over the course of the year. But yeah, no, I definitely enjoyed the sessions while I was there.
100%, yeah. Like, and because I suppose sometimes with some club teams, like you see, like even a club not too far from me here, St. Vincent's, like they've obviously been relegated in the Dublin Senior Football Championship. Sometimes you see this with a lot of clubs where they kind of go through a cycle, a huge period of success. Maybe they might win a couple of All Irelands. Then obviously players get older, players leave, you have injuries, and then you can find yourself in relegation battles. But I suppose for Cuala, like, would you expect them to kind of come back stronger next year as well? Like, can you see the underage players coming through, or do you think maybe those 2 All Irelands was probably not necessarily the pinnacle of that success? They might go on to win it again, but that was probably the big achievement, I suppose, over the past couple of years.
Yeah, well, I think it's key to have absolutely everybody on the field. And I mean, not having Paul Schutte, he's involved in the backroom team at this point, but like, he was such a key player for us. He could be out for like 4 months. I remember he tore his hamstring. He was out for 4 months after the Leinster final in 2017. Came back, didn't even have a training session done going into the All Ireland, the drawn one against the Pierce in 2018, and he was man of the match. And like, it went to extra time. And then early on in the replay, then he tore his hamstring again. So he was out for about another 6 months. But like, he's one of those players who could be out for 6 months, come back and be the best player on the pitch. So he's a massive miss, and he's not going to be back again. So if you're asking anyone to come into his place, there's like, you're losing a few percent there straight away. Colin Cronin, I would say from the outside, because he's not always the most stylish looking player, but what a workhorse he is. And like, he's been so crucial to so many victories for Cuala over the years. Scored a goal in that All Ireland final in 2017. Even as recently as last year, he was just working like mad. Was it last year or the year before? Anyway, it was one of the more recent ones. He'd gotten dropped for the semi-final, came on at halftime, turned it around against Lucan, I think, and then he was brilliant in the final. Like, he's the guy who sets the tone in the forward line all the time. So you're asking a lot for young players to come in and take it up to the next level. And then, obviously, the other guys are, like miles on the clock, injuries, stuff like that. But there's no reason that if everyone isn't there and things are organised the right way next year, that the team can't go back and win a Dublin championship again. And if you win Dublin, like, outside of whatever comes out of Kilkenny, which is usually Ballyhale, there's nobody that Cuala would be, any Dublin champion would necessarily be thinking, all right, there's no hope of winning Leinster here. I think there is, but it's a long way away from what we saw on Sunday, because winning that performance on Sunday was absolutely terrible. So, I mean, it's a long way away, but it's not like it's not possible.
And as for Kilmacud Crokes, like, I mean, that was like some performance by themselves as well. Like, they never seemed to get tired at all in the game, like the way they were pressing on some of the opposition players as well. Like, and they look like a team that could have easily played the 70 minutes, in all honesty. They look like a team that could have kept going. Like, they just didn't seem to tire whatsoever. And I suppose, like what you were saying earlier, like, they got to, 4 county finals there, or like since they last won it, or give or take, they've been there or thereabouts over the last couple of years since they last won one in 2014. So huge final now coming up for them against Na Fianna.
Definitely, they've been losing finals and semi-finals by like a score. I think they lost to us in 16 and 17. I might have the years wrong, by a goal each time, and then I think they lost a replay to Bowden in 2019, was it, by a goal as well. So they're getting so close all the time, but just not quite getting over the line. But they've never feared Cuala, obviously, like near neighbours, they don't. And over the years, both teams have beaten each other several times. And Na Fianna have never gotten to a senior county final before, so they'll fancy winning this. But if you go through their back line, they've got 3 or 4 lads who are like 19 years of age, 20 years of age. So in terms of legs, those lads will stay going all day. And they just have a great spine to their team. And like any club team that has the likes of Fergal Whiteley, who's maybe not known throughout the country, but has Oisin O'Rourke there buzzing around the 65 and up and down, has Ronan Hayes in there, even Alex Considine, like if he turns and goes at you, he's a bull of a player too. Like they shouldn't be too far away from anyone. Not only should they be looking at winning Dublin, but they should be looking at having a right good run at Leinster, because any of the other teams that have come out of Dublin in recent years, you know, they haven't shown their best stuff. So they will be heavy favourites here, but like the final against Na Fianna should be quite good, because Liam Rush has just transferred to Na Fianna this year, first season. St. Pat's Palmerstown weren't able to fulfill their 2 or 3 fixtures, I think, last year in the Dublin Championship. So you can understand why he'd want to sort of push on and kick on in club hurling. Donald Burke is there, Colin Curry, AJ Murphy, Shane Barrett. I think he needs to take himself up to the next level. He looked a really good player for Dublin, but doesn't seem to be quite at the level. But he could kick on. Sean Baxter. They have a lot of good players. I'm probably even leaving 1 or 2 out there. But it should set itself up for a good final, and it'll be the first non-Cuala or non-Ballyboden winner since 2014. So you can imagine the excitement on the final whistle, no matter who wins.
Yeah, I was going to say that to you as well, like, because Na Fianna, like, they've had all this underage success over the last couple of years. Like, they're building, not just in hurling, but in football as well. Like, I kind of felt they might have a good crack at the Dublin Senior Football Championship this year. Obviously, that didn't happen in the end. They were beaten in the quarterfinals. But, like, in terms of hurling, like what you said there, like with Donald Burke and a lot of the other lads as well, a lot of young players coming through, like, they're going to be a tough test for Kilmacud. And like what you said, like, Kilmacud going in as favourites, it might be a little bit dangerous for them as well, given some of the failures they have had in the Dublin Championship over the past couple of years. But it should make for a very interesting game, because I suppose the pressure is on Kilmacud, but Na Fianna, like, they've a lot of good young players as well, so there'll be some pressure there too.
Yeah, and then if it becomes a tight game, that's where I think Kilmacud being there so often, even if they've come up a little bit short once or twice, I think that would stand to them. Na Fianna had a very interesting quarterfinal against St. Jude's. Now, St. Jude's had, through whatever lack of options, I'm not sure if Fiona Rin-Bryn used to take all the frees, but Danny Sutcliffe ended up taking the frees. And like, I've been waxing lyrical about his performances for Dublin this year. It was kind of like 2013 type form, but he was taking the frees and he looked like somebody who's not used to taking frees. And, you know, he hit a load of them wide. Like they were just, it was very unnatural kind of free taking stance. And Donald Burke was knocking him over. It went to extra time then, and then Donald Burke got the yips and he started missing frees. So both teams were missing frees. It was this really dramatic sort of a shootout. Would probably be doing a disservice to it, because the shooting was so bad. And then ultimately Colin Curry stepped up. I think he scored a goal and he also started knocking over the frees. But they got very, very jittery in this tight game where everyone expected them to win well. And anytime there's expectation in the Fianna in the last year or two, like last year, they beat Cuala in the group stages by 12 or 6 points. They were up by 12 late on, and Cuala got 2 late goals just to take the bad look off it. But now that the expectation is there, you're into a final. This is where I'd probably start nudging towards Kilmacud, just because they've been there and they've probably, yeah, I don't know. There's a lot of different factors, but just the old eye test without fully looking at all the matchups just yet, I haven't gone that far yet. I would just be leaning towards Crokes. I might change my mind yet, but I think Crokes, yeah.
Yeah, I'd probably be the same as well. Like, I think, look what you said, like, they've been thereabouts over the last couple of years, and look, they beat Cuala twice this year, and they beat them fairly convincingly, really, in both games. So you'd have to fancy them in many ways, like what you said. And probably for Na Fianna, it's probably just maybe a year or two early, maybe next year. Like, maybe they just need to, I suppose, get used to playing in these big semi-finals, finals before maybe they can think going beyond that, I suppose.
Yeah, the only problem for them is if they leave it too much longer, it'll end up passing them by altogether. That's something you see. There's these teams that are coming forever. Like, for example, Turlough have won all these failures or whatever, and then, you know, they played in one final only and they got knocked out of a preliminary quarterfinal this year by a senior B team. So you eventually have to make that breakthrough, but the quality is there. They kept looking to just 12 points the last day. I think it is going to, like, you've probably noticed that the scores in games has dropped dramatically in the last few weeks. Like, we're probably playing a lot of county championship finals a lot later in the year than we were this time last year. Maybe that's where I was wrong about Kildangan. They probably played it in much nicer weather last year, semi-final in dirtier conditions this year. Maybe that kind of plays a part. But Na Fianna, they're going to have to make it count very, very soon, because Liam Rush is probably 30, 31. Martin Quilty's been on the road quite a long time. He was a county player around 2012, 2013, had a cruise ship or whatever. Like somebody, you eventually do have to deliver. So Paul O'Dea actually is another player I should have mentioned. He's very good back. But I think they're going to have to make it count fairly soon, because there's no guarantee that Ballyboden won't kick on next year. They're after signing Timmy Hammersley, who's an ex-Tipperary hurler. He's a very good free taker as well. I'm not sure if he'll be starting or not. We'll see how it goes next year. But like, they could kick on to another level next year. Cuala could be back to back to their best. So you have to strike while the iron's hot, or maybe you'll never actually strike.
Yeah, it's a fair point actually, and even looking beyond that as well, like if whoever was to come through, whether it was Kilmacud or Na Fianna, like looking up the possible meeting of Ballyhale in a Leinster club final, or I'm not too sure on the draw, maybe they might meet in a semi-final. I mean, that'd be a cracking game altogether, and you'd probably fancy Ballyhale at this moment in time. I know they haven't come through Kilkenny yet, but look from the outsider point of view, with the talent and players that they've had and what they've obviously achieved over the last couple of years, like you'd be looking towards them, not just probably in Leinster, but probably for the whole All Ireland.
Yeah, as far as I know, the way it would work out, assuming the Dublin team kept winning and the Kilkenny team kept winning, it would be a Kilkenny versus Dublin Leinster final. But of course, there hasn't been the last time out. It was St. Mullins of Carlow who got through to the Leinster final after beating Cuala along the way. So it remains to be seen. But you'd have to fancy Ballyhale. They've O'Loughlin Gaels in the county final this coming weekend, and I think everyone will have them as unbackable favourites here. I mean, look at the forward line they have. It's an inter-county forward line. TJ Reid, Owen Cody, Adrian Mullen, and then some other lads who've collected a litany of awards, the likes of Owen Cody. I think he has a ridiculous amount of medals. I'm not sure who put it up there about a year ago after they won their most recent title, but he has a ridiculous level of medals. And even in the back line, having the likes of Joey Holden, Richie Reid, probably centre back. O'Loughlin Gaels are good, and they've moved Paddy Deegan up to the forward line. You've Hugh Lawler there, and they have a lot of really quality players. Mark Bergen comes to mind. Robbie Buckley's a good stick man. There's probably an obvious player or two I'm not picking out, but you probably have to fancy Ballyhale in that one. And from there, you're looking at Ballyhale probably to win the All Ireland again. But I'm just wondering who come through Munster and offer a challenge. I don't see St. Thomas's winning it, even if they win Galway. I think Schlockneil will probably come through Ulster again, even though Dunloy will have something to say about that. But Ballygunner, it might be time for Ballygunner to finally step up and get this one over the line, because they won't have Na Piarsaigh, who are the team that have absolutely plagued them in the Munster club over the years, in there. And so will Thurles Sarsfields kick on to another level again? I don't know. They might lose to Lockmore anyway. Then in Clare, you're going to have Ballyea without Tony Kelly. Aina Kilnamona, who've never been in a Clare final before, so I don't know if they'd keep the run going there. Limerick, you've got who won Limerick again? Oh, Kilmallock.
Kilmallock was
so
there, yeah.
Like, the door is kind of open for Ballygunner. That's not to say they'll walk through it, but Ballygunner and Ballyhale, I wouldn't mind seeing that game at some stage this year.
Yeah, that'd be a cracking game, no doubt about it. Like, because I suppose for Ballygunner, they've been that team down the years that everyone's kind of fancied at some point to come through Munster and make a crack at an All Ireland, but it does seem to be on the big occasion in Munster finals or semi-finals has probably let them down. Obviously, they lost to United Borris-Lee there a few years ago. And like, looking at it this year, like with some of the sides that are obviously coming through Munster at the moment, like it does kind of seem a little wide open as well. Like, you've probably got a few county champions in there that people probably weren't expecting, in terms of obviously Na Piarsaigh didn't come through Limerick, and like what you said, Tony Kelly's injured with Ballyea, so we're not too sure how they're going to sort of line up. But yeah, I mean, it should make for a very, very interesting Munster Club Championship, and Ballygunner coming through Munster, taking on Ballyhale. I mean, that would be a cracking game.
Yeah, Ballygunner, I'd say, have to be very, very sore from the Munster final against Borris-Lee in late 2019. And obviously, because there was no championship last year due to COVID, this will be their first opportunity. They've been stewing for a long, long time. But they must have played their county final 3 or 4 weeks ago at this stage. And maybe 1 or 2 of them are playing football at the moment. I'm nearly sure they are. But I mean, it's tough to keep sharp in the meantime, because who do you play challenge matches against? As far as I know, they're going to be playing the Clare champions in the quarter final. and then it would be against the Tipperary team in the semi-final. Like, I feel like Cork and Limerick are on the other side. I'm sure someone will correct me if I have that wrong. That's just off the top of the head. I think it is there for them, but again, like it's like they've had great battles with Thurles over the years. If it comes to a clash with them, so they definitely, like, you know, like, being forearmed has been forewarned, and you know, they've kind of come up short before. So I'm sure they won't take that for granted. We've played them in challenge matches. I remember first playing them in a championship or challenge match in 2015, somewhere in Carlow. The lights went out during the middle of an evening game in the winter. So you can imagine how ideal that was. Absolutely pitch black on field, couldn't see me around me at all. But like, they're a good team, good players from front to back. There's no reason why they shouldn't, except for the fact that maybe their hurling and their style is tailored too much towards summer hurling rather than winter, as we saw against Bursley. I'm actually trying to think, how much did they score against Bursley that day? It was very, very low scoring. I'm actually looking it up there. Yeah, they only scored 111 that day. So, I mean, that's the sort of game you're going to have in winter. So are they suited to that? And that probably is the doubt that's there. But, you know, you'd have to fancy him to make a right burst at it.
Yeah, it is an interesting point of view as well. Like what you said with the big long gap as well. Like, you've seen even the Wexford County titles, like the title winners, Rapparees, like, and the big gap that they have. Like, so yeah, like, it's definitely a huge gap for them, and they might have a couple of challenge games in there as well. But I suppose, like, the pressure is going to be on them, I suppose, going into Munster. Whereas I suppose for Kilmacud and the Tipperary champions and the Clare champions, like, that level of pressure probably won't be the same.
Well, it will be for Thurles if they get through, because they never got over the line before. I don't think their team is as good as the one that should have done a little bit better in previous years. But having watched them last weekend, Paddy Maher was on fire. Now, Kildangan, some of what they did was ridiculous, but Paddy Maher was absolutely brilliant. Rona Maher was very steady at centre back. Then you had a full forward line, and this is where Thurles should have a chance. They have a small half forward line, but they bypassed it in terms of long ball and went straight to their full forward line. And Pa Burke is going to, like, he's not a big player, but he's a physical player, and he's very at club level, and he's very good at kind of holding lads off him. It'll normally be a smaller cornerback marking him, so they're under pressure physically straight away. Dennis Maher, former county player, is a huge man, and he turns and goes at you all the time. And Paddy Creedon is going to be possibly a future Tipp player, corner forward. He scored 5 points from play the other day, and they went long on them all the time, which would suit winter hurling, as long as you mix it up enough so that you don't become predictable. But the point you make about the point that we both made, I suppose, about Rapparees waiting so long and Ballygunner waiting so long and seeing what your form be like. We had that before when, you know, you might play a Leinster final at the start of December, early December, and you don't play again in the All-Ireland semi-final until, I think, was it late January or maybe even early February? I can't remember off the top of my head. You just don't know where you're at. And like, even there can be 6 weeks out from an All-Ireland final, from the semi-final, and you're like, where are we at form-wise? But the difference is, usually that's both teams don't know where they're at. Whereas, like, whoever Ballygunner play, that team will probably have played a few weeks just beforehand, so they will know where they're at. So that's probably why it's probably going to be a little bit lopsided for them in that sense. But, you know, make no mistake, managers aren't entirely sure how their team are going to play when they've been sitting on the shelf for about 4 or 5 weeks.
It's going to be very interesting, all right, to keep an eye on it. I suppose you mentioned there, like, in terms of playing for Cuala yourself, like, do you ever miss being out there in the action with the senior team, or being in the thick of it, I suppose, when it comes to county finals and obviously competing for All Irelands as well? Yeah,
definitely. I mean, it just had, like, the last year or two, different reasons I haven't been able to play or commit as much. But I did play last year, injury riddled, of course, when you're in your late 30s. And we got to a County B final. I did my hamstring the week before, and I wanted to play the final, and they didn't start me. And I came on after 15 minutes because we're under pressure, and I wasn't sprinting. I was just kind of, you know, using a bit of experience to get around the place. Did fine, but we ended up losing that Senior B final. And, you know, it was nice to play there. I was in Parnell Park. It felt like there was it felt like it was a bit of an occasion, even though there was no one there because of COVID, or else there was very few people. I can't remember if it was nobody or very few. So, but yeah, I definitely missed the big occasions, like the All-Ireland finals. They were fantastic. Like, even the county finals in Dublin. Go back to 2015 when we won our first one against St. Jude's that day, and I was starting wing back, and never remember as being as tired at the end of the game, because there's sort of this I suppose you build it up within yourself, this pressure to get over the line. And that's why you so often hear people talking about relief when they win something. You know, you always say, well, how did that feel? And you're just pure relief. But that's because of the pressure you put on yourself. Or maybe, you know, I wouldn't have felt this from anyone in the area, but like I'm sure a lot of people, they feel the pressure from the parish or the club people, you know, we need to get this one over the line or whatever. But definitely that sort of pressure you put on yourself, that's why people always say relief, because it's worth it. And when we won the All Ireland in 2018, the replay in Portlaoise against Na Fianna, I came on after about 25 minutes when Paul Schutte did his hamstring. And I, like, ridiculous circumstances, I forgot to bring my boots to the All Ireland final. I mean, how ridiculous is that? And the game was in Portlaoise, so I couldn't just nip home. So I forgot the long studs. You know, I mean, it was March. It was horrendous weather. It was cold weather. It was soft weather, and I opened up the gear bag, and I was like, oh God, where are my boots? Now I had the other pair, you know, the sort of moldy ones, but they're not suited to winter weather. So there I was inside having this like an internal panic attack about I don't have my boots. But I'm like, I'm not going to say it to the manager either, because I don't want to be out of contention just on the basis of him thinking, all right, something's wrong there, we can't use him. So, which is possibly a bit selfish, but anyway, did it. Went out and did the warm-up with the other boots on. And there's like a pitch just to the adjacent to O'Moore Park. So I was out there and I was sort of trying to run hard and sort of change direction all of a shot, just to test out the boots and see, is this going to be okay for turning? You know, like this, imagine this sort of crack going on in your head just before an All Ireland final, because the whole idea is tick every box. So you go out there with a clear head and you've no issue at all. So then did that. Obviously I wasn't starting, I knew that anyway. And the game started and I was sitting on the bench, and I had this thing, like, because I was on the bench at this stage, you know, being 35 years of age, hard to get on a team like that that's full of inter-county players. But I was sitting on the bench, and normally I'd have the helmet underneath my feet, more or less, you know, and you're like those fold-up seats and like they're absolutely filled with players. But for whatever reason, this time I left it down on the sideline. So there's hoarding around the pitch in O'Moore Park, and then the seats are back from that again. So it had left down the sideline, a nice bit away from me. And I was warming up once or twice, and then Paul Schutte got injured. And Matty turns around and says, you know, gives me the nod to come on. And I went looking for the helmet on the sideline, live on TV, All Ireland final, and I could not find my helmet. And I was panicking. So I don't have the right boots on for an All Ireland final, and then I can't find my helmet. So I'm looking around, I'm panicking. I asked one of the other subs, I think it was Shane Murphy, can I have your helmet? I tried to put his helmet on. You can see this on TV. I'm putting on the wrong helmet. It wouldn't fit my big fat head. Then I go and I finally, I'm just panicking because Matty's roaring at me at this stage. And I look over and I see under the fold-up seat, you know, the fold-up seats that are on the sideline also inside the hoarding. And I went over and I was like, is that my helmet? And I was like, oh God, thank God. So I put that on and I go onto the field, and you're straight into the thick of it right away. And I think we had turned over a ball in their backline, and it was either Sean Moran or Darragh O'Connell handed it to me. And I just turned and hit it as hard as I've ever hit a ball in my life. And they started screaming at me because they were like, you know, work the ball up the field. Don't be, you know, just blasting it. But this was all like think of my preparation going into an All-Ireland final. I didn't have my boots. I couldn't find my helmet. And then I'm out in the field. You can imagine just like your head is on fire, and then you just end up blasting the ball, reverting to type because of that. Luckily, halftime went because I got a couple of minutes to kind of adjust. But that's what I always think about when I think about those occasions. And then when you get over the finish line, that's why I think relief comes in, because you're like, thank God all the extra effort was worth it, and we got through, and you didn't make a complete clown of yourself.
To be fair, it makes for some story. Like, I'm sure when you are sitting around, probably maybe having a few points, maybe like reminiscing on those days, winning the All Ireland and whatnot, like it probably makes for a funny story. Like when you're talking about, you remember when you left your boots at home, couldn't find your helmet. Like it was probably all nerves, I'd say, as well, probably for the big occasion. Like it's probably maybe not like thinking the nerves, but maybe subconsciously or something like that.
Yeah, and you know, also in the months leading into so I'd had a lot of injuries, which seems to be a common theme here. But after we won the All Ireland in 2017, I was very, very frustrated with the lack of game time going into that season. I hadn't even come on in the All Ireland final, so I was quite frustrated with that, having like previous years, you know, been playing an awful lot more. But I'd been carrying an injury throughout that first All-Ireland season. And when the season ended, I broke my hand in the first league match after the All-Ireland against Parnells, putting a hand up for a puck out and someone pulled across it. I didn't even notice until after the game. I was like, that wasn't great now, but it was after the game. And I ended up with this massive cast on my arm. You often hear about people playing on with broken hands or whatever, but it's actually not that uncommon. Like I've had a few times where after the game, you're like, all right, that was actually broken. But, the adrenaline or whatever, you don't notice it. So it's not as, you're not as much of a hard man as it sounds. It's just, it generally doesn't hurt quite as badly as all that. The odd one does. So then I had to take 4 months off. And then I decided to do this sort of extra training regime and this is a good culture. Like this is a typical of a good culture. You have lads who want to get into the team, so they're doing extra stuff. And then the lads who are on the team are doing extra stuff. And often, in many cases, the lads who are on the team anyway are doing extra stuff. And it just promotes that good culture where there's like merit in getting on the team and everybody is doing extra to get up there. So I was doing 3 extra personal training sessions per week to try and get onto the Cuala team with Clean O'Connor, who does some of the physical preparation with the Dublin Hurlers. She was previously involved with the Dublin Footballers. And there's a Laker Gale about her. She was a Dublin football goalie for 10 years. So she's brilliant. So I was doing all this extra work with her after the injury and being out for 4 months to try and get right. So in Dublin then, we played in the final of the Dublin Championship, on TV, on Air Sport against Kilmacud. And I came on full forward for that. And I was like, great, decent spot now, and hopefully I keep featuring in the Leinster Championship. And actually, funnily enough, I come on in the semi-final against St. Vincent's, wing back initially, and that wasn't going great for me actually, because I think Keane McBride scored a point off me, and he should have scored another in the space of 2 minutes. Then Matty threw me up full forward, and I set up a goal for Con. And then what happened right at the very end of the game, we were up by 5, I think. And I intercepted a hand pass out from the goalie to the corner back. And there's like a still, because this was on Dublin GAA. There's a still where I'm standing there 20 yards out from the goals, and there's actually nobody in the goals at all. And this has been used against me ever since. People keep putting it up on the Cuala WhatsApp group and some of my other friend groups. But instead of going for the goal, now a split second later, the goalie's in the centre of the goal. But I don't really back my shooting from distance. So I ran it in and I just tapped it over the bar, even though I was 1-on-1 with the goalie. So I get slated for that ever since. But then, back to Cuala. Then I struggled to get into the team then because we were hammering teams in Leinster. And I always had this thing that I said to the boys, they'll bring me on when we're 10 points up so that we can win by 12. They'll throw me on when it's a close game. I can't even remember. What was the question, actually? I can't even remember where I was going with all of this. But it was all this extra work just to get back into the team anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. No, which
I ultimately didn't do either. I just started to come on as a sub, and I didn't even come on in the All-Ireland semi-final against Liam Mellows and Thurles. I was kind of furious about that because we'd used 5 subs. Was it 5 or 6? Anyway, I think 5. Didn't even get to come on in that game. And I'm from Bursley, 8 miles out from Thurles. I was mad to play in this. But then because it was against Na Fianna, it was going to be a tight game, physical game. And all the extra training I'd done, I think ultimately Matty started to notice the physical improvement in training, and because it was a tight game and they're big men, I ended up getting used in the final for that. There is a case then of when you do win, that was my immediate reaction. So other than the tears coming down my face on the final whistle against Na Fianna in the replay, it was just thank F that was worth it.
Relief.
That was actually, I still remember that being in my head. Thank F it was worth it. All the extra effort that is,
Yeah, no, absolutely. I can imagine so, right? Especially after, I suppose, making the commitment from Tipperary, moving up as well and all the rest. Just looking at Cuala in general, it's been some rise for the club as well. I think a lot of people probably look at Cuala nowadays maybe and think, oh, sure, they were always there. They were always winning county titles or whatever. Sometimes there's that narrative sometimes about certain club teams, but there was a 21-year gap, wasn't there, between 2015 and 94, without a county title. And like what you said there, when we were speaking earlier about Na Fianna, sometimes some clubs can use all the underage success and build on it and, start to dominate and maybe go on and win a few All Ireland. Some clubs don't. And I suppose your club, Cuala, they done exactly that, winning that first county title in 2015, which I imagine was probably a huge step as well towards that eventual success and winning those All Irelands as well. Yeah,
I mean, the team had tailspun for a long time after they won those county titles 89, 94, 90, somewhere in the middle anyway there. So they won 3 in that short space of time. And then I think for the 5 years before I had joined, the team hadn't even gotten out of the group stages. And when I was joining in 2011, a few people said to me, why are you joining them? Now, I'd been hurling in New York for the summer of 2010, sharing a room with a couple of the Cuala lads. I wasn't going to be able to get home to Ballyhale, so they just said, do you want to play with us? So I did. It was great, really, really welcoming club, great people there. But, for a few, first year, we get Ballyboden a good game in the county final. I think this was the final year of their 5 in a row that they initially did. They won a few more after that. And then whatever happened, both Dublin hurlers and footballers had really long seasons in 2011, because Dublin obviously won their breakthrough All Ireland, and the hurlers got to the semi-final against Tipperary. So we played the first group game, and they actually cancelled the group stages, and we went straight into an open draw for the quarter-final, which we lost to Lucan. Then the next year we got to a county final. Harry Roberts had taken the team the previous year. I think nobody wanted it. He did some great work there, and the team built from there. Now, obviously, it wasn't just a straight line to the top, but it took a couple of years. But he came in, John Dermody, he's from Ballyhale. Actually, he was coach. He was involved with Carlo there last year, and also that horse Put the Kettle On. I'm not sure if you've heard of that particular horse, but he's involved with that horse also. And then Matty came in, and obviously things took off from there. But definitely it was a club that, I think the big foundation was all the underage work that they did with the academy, maybe 15 years ago at this stage. So that was huge. But so the talent of, let's say, Paul Schutte, Oisin Goff, David Tracy, I might be leaving out somebody there, but they were there. And then you obviously had another few players coming through, over time. Sean Tracy, Jake Malone, and Con O'Callaghan all came through at the one go. 2012, Colin Cronin and Cian O'Callaghan came through. They both made their debuts as Leaving Cert lads in the county final against Kilmacud Crokes, which is mad when you think about it. And then there's a couple of additions from outside the county that are good. And I think all of those things together. And then when Matty came in, it was like a confluence of factors, and it all allowed the team to kick on to that next level. So it was a bit of a perfect storm. And it led to what we saw there for about 3 or 4 years when the team was just winning all around it.
Were you aware, when you came into Cuala in 2011, like you were saying before, that there was something building here? Maybe, did you ever dream maybe you could go on and win an All Ireland or a few county titles? Was that even in your thinking, or were you just thinking this is a club in Dublin playing hurling, happy days?
Never in a month of Sundays did I think this team would be winning much. I was aware of Paul Schutte, more so David Tracy, and then Oisin Goff. Yeah. He'd made his name a bit more with the Dublin seniors than Paul. Paul is, Mr. Biscuit Bones himself, constantly injured. So I was aware of 1 or 2 of them. Obviously, at that stage, late 2010, early 2011, when I'm joining, Sean Tracy and Con O'Callaghan and all these lads are probably 15 years of age. So, I wouldn't have heard of those sort of guys. I had no idea. The first time I ever watched a Cuala match was late 2010 in a delayed relegation playoff against Na Fianna. So the first thing I saw was the team get relegated down to Division 2 of the league. So in my first season then, we played league games against teams that are probably, just a million miles off it in terms of trying to compete for a county championship. And we weren't exactly beating them too handily either. And it was a couple of years before, in my first year, we didn't win a group game, obviously, because the thing was cancelled. And in the second year, we got to county final. Third year, terrible. Fourth year, only okay. There was no such thing that all the success that followed was going to happen. So, and one of my friends from Dublin just said, "Why are you joining those softies?" But as it turned out, nothing could be further from the truth. And that's actually a stick that is used to beat Cuala with over the years. And I'm sure the likes of Kilmacud would hear it as well about them. These soft Southsider lads won't win anything, but they're just the same as anyone from any club player from all over the country. You go out on the field and the body goes on the line, and that's it.
Yeah, well, I think if they're soft, I think they're doing something right anyway. Not just in hurling, but in football as well. Because unfortunately for myself as a Northsider, we don't really have much Northside teams left in both senior and hurling championships. It's all just, I suppose, Na Fianna are the only ones flying the flag for us, I suppose, in the county final. But like usually in Dublin, I know down the years it'd be a lot of footballers would come from the north side, the hurlers would come from the south side. But it seems now like like the south side just seems to have both hurlers and footballers all together. Like you think of even Conor O'Callaghan as well, and the talent that he is, not just both in football but in hurling as well.
Yeah, no, he's obviously a fantastic player, and no doubt Matty Kenny would love to have him with the hurlers too, but I just couldn't see anything but him being a Dublin footballer for the next number of years, however long he's fit and healthy to do so. But yeah, I would imagine a lot of it is down to Southside clubs just really getting their houses in order and getting their academies in order. And then like when you have huge memberships and huge amount of players coming through, it's ensuring that the drop-off rate, which is huge in every club, and I'd say the Southside clubs is no different, but just trying to harness all that, because I've seen stats before with some of the clubs in the south side having over 100 different teams between male and female of all different age groups. I think one club even has about 170 teams. And I mean, being a bog man myself down from Tipperary, and I look at the numbers of some of the like age groups. So let's say like an under 10 team, which would just be that single year. I'm not talking about, under 10, 12, where there's like 2 years compressed in one. There could be 100 plus kids, and probably well above 100 plus kids at times in some of the south side clubs. And like for Ballyhale, you'd be hoping to have like 20, and in many occasions you'd have far fewer than that. So if you've got that sort of natural advantage in Dublin, whether it's a south side club that's really looking after itself or looking after these numbers, and I'm sure there's teams in the north too. I mean, I just wouldn't know them as well. But like you've huge possibilities to develop a huge amount of players. And like you'd even see it too, like a lot of clubs have 5 and 6 adult teams up here, and I played a third team football match a couple of years ago, and I thought it was just going to be show up and do a bit of messing, but like it was full tactics. I think it was like AFL 8, AFL 10, something like that, I'm not even sure, but they were full into the tactics, they were full into the run and take it seriously. And I mean, like if you've got that all the way down through your club, you're going to be developing serious players. So I don't know, maybe it's a case just that the south side clubs have gotten their houses in order a little bit more. Do you get that sense in the north side?
Absolutely, yeah. Like they're not with every club now, but say my local club, Whitehall Comkill, like kind of similar to yourself. Like I would have stepped away like when I was 16, mainly just because I was focused on school and I was playing soccer as well. I was definitely more of a football man than a hurling man, unfortunately. But say even from playing you could even tell with that club as well, with the new pitch, there was a new gym, the amount of facilities that were coming through. And I know sometimes like Dublin sometimes get a lot of stick sometimes because of the resources and funding and whatnot that probably came from the GAA and whatnot. But like when you look at how well it's used, like it's done a tremendous amount of work for footballers, hurlers, growing up at grassroots level. And even for Whitehall myself, like from seeing from even like I lived in Canada for a few years, and similar to yourself, I came back and was playing for one of the junior teams and similar as well. It was like, Jesus, like the standard has definitely improved here, like considering, from where it was a few years ago, and you're seeing that with players coming through. But it's happening with all clubs in Dublin as well. Like you're seeing even Skerry's Harps as well, like they're doing a lot of great work. They nearly beat Ballymun there in the football, which would have been a monumental result for them. So yeah, I think for both south side and north side, like tremendous amount of use of those resources. Like sometimes Dublin probably get a lot of stick maybe for maybe getting all those grants for games development officers and whatnot in the first place, but you can't deny like they've used this one absolute T, and it's reaping the rewards of it, I suppose, now.
And I'm sure they can do even more with it. It's interestingly, I saw Ballyboden putting out inviting basically people to apply for a job as a coach with the club and to help with player development and stuff like that. And and I'm saying best of luck to them with doing that. The fact that they have the resources to do that. I go out to their facilities, and I would have gone to the physio Eamon O'Reilly out there a few times. They have great facilities out there, and if they're in a position to do that, that's great. But then around the country, again, I'll just use Ballyhale as an example. You'd only love to have that. You'd only love to have the funds to be able to bring in like analysis teams, and like I see St. Jude's have this big TV analysis, video analysis sort of. It looks like a small little cinema type thing, and rural clubs just obviously don't have that, but they have different things. Obviously every club has its pride and people in there who are doing everything to develop the club and the players, but I look down home as well, and it's just it's obviously the same, but like it's kind of different too in a way, because the entire town is focused on nothing. I mean, most people are focused on nothing but hurling when it comes to hurling season. I was down there at the weekend, and I brought down the woman, and she's a Clontarf woman, wouldn't be of GAA stock now at all, knows nothing about it. But coming away from the pub, she goes, everyone in the town knows everything about every hurler. You know, so like it's almost like just the culture of the place is nothing but hurling. And I think in a way, maybe that feeds into the idea of like every player is made the most of. Now, I'm not saying coaching is always brilliant, because you probably everywhere hemorrhages players because they don't have the coaching right or whatever. But so much focus is put onto it that you'll always have hurlers in that area, whereas maybe more slip through the net when numbers are massive, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, no, it's a good point as well. Like, I think as a Dublin man myself, I kind of know, like, my mom's from Westmeath, so sometimes when you go down there as well, like, a lot of people kind of seem to know everything about everyone down there. Like, and it does seem to be like that quite a lot, and a lot of the countryside, I suppose. Even like, I spent a bit of time in Mayo as well, unfortunately. Like, I went down there in a few different trips, and geez, you hear everything from club players, from intermediate players, from this is happening, there's this junior football match happening here in Dublin. I suppose maybe because it's a lot more obviously cultural, or a lot more multicultural, I suppose I should say. Like, you probably don't get that as much, but nonetheless, like, certainly for Dublin over the past couple of years, like, it's definitely been a tremendous amount of work that's been put in all the clubs, and it's been brilliant. Like, I suppose for a Dublin man to witness it, maybe not so much for people of other counties.
Yeah, no, I mean, I enjoyed it at the start. I got to be honest, I'm sick of Dublin winning, even though, I know Michael Fitzsimons and Con O'Callaghan relatively well from Cuala, but I'm completely tired of them winning at this stage. But it has been some phenomenon to see them grow in those recent years. I really don't like when people talk about splitting the county in two. So yeah. I want them to stop winning. Call a spade a spade. I want to see more variety, and I'd like to see the structure changed, which I'm sure you would in football. But I'd like the GAA to put just more money into coaching in other counties to ensure they get the best out of themselves. And obviously Dublin have a huge amount of resources in terms of the amount of sponsors and commercial opportunities they have. What are Leitrim going to do? They've got the name of a pub based in McLean Avenue in New York at the front of their jersey versus, it's just not really a level playing field. I don't blame Dublin for maximising everything they have. And as I said, I don't want them split in two. But the GAA have to find ways to make sure that they can prop up these other counties. And obviously Leitrim are never going to compete with Dublin, but find some way to level it out. Like even Roscommon last year, they've got on the back of they've got these T-shirts during warm-up saying win a house in London. So they're doing this fundraiser to try. So the whole thing's a little bit kind of silly. And like I'm a huge fan of the NFL, and I don't follow basketball and baseball as much, but there's sort of they try to level it up as much as possible. And I would like to see ways that we can level it up and creative thinking, but it just feels like we are stuck in the dark ages a little bit in terms of kind of bringing a bit of parity to the sport. But obviously we're not going to solve that here and now. But I do want to see things kind of leveling out a little bit in the football championship. It'd be great to see Dublin kick on a little bit more in the hurling, because when they were going well and got to an All-Ireland semi-final in 2013 against Cork, it was one of the best atmospheres I was ever at. I have to say, it was something like 60,000 there, and I had a few of my teammates playing at the time. But it was like, if that team really got going and had a couple of stars for people to buy into, I think it could be another phenomenon. But the thing is, I don't think Dublin would ever do in hurling what they're doing in football in terms of just winning title after title. But it would just be another team that could win an All Ireland, and that would be brilliant. Yeah,
like I was at that game as well, all right, and there was definitely a general sense, all right, that Dublin could end up doing the double that year. Obviously, they won the All Ireland in the football, like, and I remember that semi-final quite well against Cork as well, and Patrick Horgan's goal and whatnot as well. Like, it was a very close game, very competitive game, and there probably is that general sense as well for Dublin that maybe that was the one that got away. Like, obviously Kilkenny were motoring too well that year. Tipp, not the same either. You had Limerick and Clare in the other semi-final. Like, you had a lot of teams really who had young players and whatnot. And would Dublin have beaten Clare in the final? I don't know. Maybe Davey would have got one over on us, but who knows? Like, if we had got through that game, maybe we might have won it. But I suppose it's all ifs, buts, and maybes.
Yeah, and to me, Brian O'Dwyer was wrongly sent off in that semi-final. He got 2 yellow cards. The second one was, well, the first one was harsh. Now, he went in, he did your man, Jamie Coughlin. He hit him a nice one. I don't mean he did him in a premeditated way, but he caught him. But it wasn't quite a yellow card to me. And then the second one, I think it was Lachlan McLaughlin, miscontrolled the ball. So Ryan O'Dwyer was coming in to tackle him, but because of the miscontrol, it meant that Lachlan McLaughlin went another way, and then Ryan came in awkwardly. But he certainly wasn't trying to, it wasn't a yellow card to me. And that changed the momentum of that game, because Ryan was man of the match that day up until that point. And I think they would have beaten Clare. Like Limerick dirtied the Togs in the semi-final. They were terrible. And Clare beat them. But, you know, as we saw in the 5 years either side, like 5 years before and the 5 years after, Clare did absolutely nothing in the hurling championship. They still haven't won Munster since 1998, I think. I think Dublin would have had them that year. I mean, and Dublin didn't start out brilliantly that year. I'm trying to remember, was that the year that Dereck Nan referred to constipated hurling when they drew with Wexford, or was that the following year? I'm not entirely sure, but they really grew as that year went on. You know, they beat Kilkenny after a replay. They hammered Galway in a Leinster final. And I think if they had to get across the line against Cork, just the red card killed them that day. I think they would have beaten Clare in the final. But sure, look, as you said, if and nuts or candy and butts and all that kind of crack.
Yeah, like, and like what you said there, like in terms of the investment that's obviously been put behind the footballers and the success of the footballers. And I suppose for a lot of players anyways, a lot of them would probably choose the footballers over the hurlers, given the success that they've had, and given the fact that you're a lot more likely to win a Leinster title or an All-Ireland title. But I suppose for the hurlers, like, given obviously you've seen at grassroots level at Cuala and the players that have come through there and winning those All-Irelands, could you see the Dublin hurlers maybe not get to a level that the Dublin footballers are on, but could you see them maybe challenging for an All-Ireland maybe 3-4 years down the line? Like, I suppose the under-20s there obviously got to a final, beating Galway. Do have plenty of good up-and-coming younger players like from the under-20s, but I suppose again there's a lot of competitive teams in hurling, isn't there? So it'd be very hard to see them beat a Limerick, or I suppose even a Tipp or anything like that.
Yeah, I don't see them winning an All-Ireland. I can see them getting to the semi-final. Like, Leinster is weaker. There's no doubt about it. Galway could get a right bounce from Henry Shefflin next year. And I'm very interested to see how their forward line goes, when it'll be based around the pace of Conor Whelan, Cathal Mannion, Brian Kincannon. Endon Ireland will come in and he'll knock every free over the bar. Shouldn't be a problem there. I'm interested to see how they go next year. I don't think Kilkenny are any great shakes at the moment. TJ is probably a year or so away from exiting the fray there. He's obviously been unbelievable over the years, but he's not quite the force he's been at inter-county level. Owen Cody will be a smashing player for years to come, as will Adrian Mullen. But they're not quite where they were at. Richie Hogan, I'm surprised that he hasn't announced his retirement at this stage. Again, like, he was unplayable for years there, but injuries have just hampered him. And also Brian Cody clearly doesn't fancy him, because he doesn't play him that often anymore. And he only came on against Cork in the semi-final because it went extra time. Like, that game was over and Cork were through and he wasn't going to be playing. But obviously it ended up getting that late goal and he did appear at that stage. So for me, Dublin are in the mix in Leinster next year and could win it. Darragh Egan might go great with Wexford, but we've no idea because he's never managed at this level before. Interestingly enough, he was the sub-goalie for Kildangan the other day, and I wonder how many people that are togging out with their club are currently inter-county managers. He's probably the only one in hurling anyway.
Yeah.
And so I think that opens the door for Dublin to win Leinster, potentially. First time, they haven't won it since 2013, but they'll need, this year, obviously COVID ruined their chances in the Leinster final. So that was a bit of a disaster. But they could potentially win that, which puts you into an All-Ireland semi-final. And if you get into an All-Ireland semi-final, and assuming Limerick stay as strong as they are and they're in the other semi-final, maybe you'll get a winnable semi-final. So maybe they could get to a final. But I think it is a big stretch. And every year, the best athletes in Dublin are tending to pick football. So, is there another star or two coming through? Like, every year you see the Cormac Costello, the Kieran Kilkenny, the Con O'Callaghan, even Eric Lowndes, they're all going to the football instead of the hurling. So it's just tough for Dublin when every other team is getting their best players going through and playing with their county hurling team. But in Dublin, that's not always the case. Like, let's say you could add 2 or 3 excellent players to that Dublin hurling team over the last few years that have gone and focused on football. If you took Noel McGrath, Seamus Callanan and Paddy Maher out of the Tipperary hurling team because they were going off playing football, would they win an All-Ireland? Do the same with Limerick. Take out Keane Lynch and Aaron Gillan and a few more. So like, people don't always kind of, you know, look at Dublin and add that in. Instead they say, they're a bit manufactured or they're not that good. Well, the best players aren't always lining out for them. So, I mean, cut them a bit of slack and don't use that as a stick to beat the lads who are committing with.
Yeah, and I suppose something that stood out for me as well, I don't know if there was an official approach from Galway for Matty Kenny or how that worked, but if he did turn down Galway to stick with Dublin, like, I feel like that's kind of a big sign as well that he's looking to stick with the Dubs and kind of see out this long-term project. And obviously he's a man you know well as well from Cuala, so I suppose that probably speaks a bit of volumes as well.
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure if Galway ever got onto him, but you know, he was definitely someone that they should have had in there, that they should have been scoping out. And he'd obviously know plenty of the players very well. He was involved with Anthony Cunningham when they won that under-21 All-Ireland 10 years ago. And then subsequently he was involved with the senior team for a couple of years. But like, he's very, very good at what he does. The level of detail is insane. Absolute hurling madman. You know, a lot of these people who are over inter-county teams are madmen. And I mean that in the sort of the level of commitment that they put in. So there's one time in All-Ireland we played, I don't know, was it maybe a Leinster quarter-final, something like that. And he wanted to get the video from Nematon, you know, who do the stuff for TG Cahir. And he wanted to have it so that the following day, so this was like a Friday, and he wanted to have the video that night so that we could do the video analysis the following day ahead of the following week's game. And the reason he liked to have the video analysis stuff done on the Saturday so that we could then play a training match on the Tuesday, wind down on the Thursday, and then into the match at the weekend. And if you had the video analysis done on the weekend, it meant all that information had a lot of time to sink in, and you weren't trying to cram it in on a Tuesday when you were also trying to play a match and all that kind of stuff. It would have been too rushed. So what he did, I hope I explained that well. What he did is he was living in Galway. He drove from Galway down to Waterford, and then from Waterford back up to Dublin to give the video analysis stuff to Shane Carney, who was doing our video stuff. He's doing it with Dublin now. And then he just drove back home to Galway that night. And Shane Carney did all the video stuff overnight, doing all the stats, cutting up the clips, all that kind of stuff. And then Matty drove back up then the following morning to present to us and give all the information and distill it down into a couple of simple points that we could take into the training session and prepare for the next game. That's the level of madman you're dealing with there. And I mean that in a good sense. So, you know, he'll get the most out of Dublin. I'm not saying they'll win anything, but they won't lack for preparation. I mean, I haven't always agreed with absolutely every decision he's made. But like, you wouldn't do that with any manager. There's no manager that I agree with them all the time. But definitely he's certainly one of the leading managers there, even if he doesn't always get the credit.
Absolutely, yeah. And that's some level of commitment that you said there as well, like driving up and back to other counties and whatnot from Waterford to Galway and back and forth. Like, I suppose a lot of people don't see that as well, the level of commitment that goes into inter-county management, and like, you know, like, fair play to him. And like what you said as well, I definitely think he's definitely the right man to lead Dublin forward anyways. And I think the progression that we even seen this year, like getting to a Leinster final, getting that win over Galway, fair enough, Galway were probably like a little bit flat on the day and whatever you want to say about Galway, but there's no doubt, like, he's definitely, you know, with some of the young lads he's bringing through as well, he's definitely putting them in the right direction anyways.
Yeah, well, like, the thing he's also bringing through is hurlers. I mean, so before there's talk, Dublin are manufactured, all that kind of insulting talk, which is quite unfair. Not every player looks unbelievably silky and all that kind of stuff over the years, but you'll have that in country teams too. I mean, you're going to tell me that every Kilkenny player looks unbelievably silky at the moment. There's a few that I could pick out, but obviously I don't want to insult anyone. There's a couple of the Limerick hurlers and Clare hurlers that I would consider quite one-sided. So, you know, I mean, people don't always like to hear that, but that is also the reality there. But, you know, Conor Burke has come through. Like, he's a very tasty stick man, you know, looks really natural. Donald Burke could be the same. Ronan Hayes, I think, could be an absolutely fabulous hurler. Sean Moran, like a friend of mine, he always says about Sean Moran, he wouldn't mind seeing him wear the blue and gold because he's just that sort of natural hurler. And there's plenty of that in Dublin. And just another point I was thinking about, Matty there is, I'm fairly sure this happened. It was due to happen. But the week before we played the All-Ireland semi-final against Schlockneil in 2017, it was on the athletic grounds in Armagh. So the week before, he drove up just to scope the place out. And I'm nearly sure he took David Tracy up with him just so Tracy could practice taking frees up in the athletic grounds. That's the sort of madness they're dealing with. But it does kind of pay off too. It can seem excessive and all that, but when it pays off, you have to say, yeah, that was a big part. Like maybe that was the extra inch that helped somewhere along the line.
OurGame.ie, obviously you're the man behind that. Like, how did that all come about? How did you get, like, kind of, how did you go about, I suppose, setting that up? Like I said to you before off camera, like, big fan. I'm always tuning in to all the hurling shows and the football shows and whatnot. So how did that all come about?
Well, I've been doing I appreciate the comments. Well, I've been doing the hurling show on Off the Ball for a couple of years, and my idea was like, that was just once a week. I think it was every Thursday around lunchtime. And my thought was, well, I kind of think that GAA is a big deal more days of the week than just the Thursday. So I was looking to do more shows, and I did a Gaelic football show for a little while there as well. But I just wanted to kick it on. So I started doing my own shows on the side. And I had said to them, look, I'm going to start doing more shows. Do you want me to do them for you? And they didn't have the budget. So I said, look, I'm just going to do it for myself. So, and the big thing, and I'm sure you understand this too, I mean, your channel's growing there the whole time. But the big thing is not to try and think you've got this brilliant production on day one. It's just you have to do it, and then hope to improve the quality of the production from there on. So the very first video I did, it looks like I'm being held captive in the Middle East, because like a friend of mine came down and he has like one of those SLR cameras, and like I was in a dark room. I didn't understand lighting. I'm sure this is something you're very familiar with, because you need to get that lighting right so it looks okay. So it was like a Friday evening ahead of a weekend at GAA, a dark room, like artificial lighting from the light bulbs, terrible camera. I put it up and it just looked awful. But I learned the lesson straight away, and I never deleted those videos, and I never will. I just have them sort of unlisted on YouTube. So they're not, if someone goes onto the channel, they're not just there, but they're still there, because I always want a reminder of the production level I started out with, just so that anytime I'm thinking, oh, maybe it isn't that great, you look at that and you're like, well, it's improved a nice bit. So I started off doing that, and I kept doing it, and I could see that, like there's obviously an appetite out there for it, whether it's the match reports or interviews or whatever. And then Borrisoleigh happened to go on that great run a few months after I started doing the channel. And I was able to do a few more videos, around Borrisoleigh and match reactions and stuff like that. And it just kept taking off and taking off. So I just said, just keep going with this. And, it's a huge amount of work, because number one, you have to learn about the video stuff, and then you're learning about live broadcasting. And then the next thing you're trying to do the images right, so the thumbnail images, the picture that you'll see before you click into the video, for people who aren't familiar with that sort of term. And there's a million and one things you have to learn about, like audio production and cutting out clips and Photoshop and Premiere Pro and all these kind of things. So it just built from there, and just trying to keep building it up all the time and get more and more people to follow and watch, and and that's it. Like, it just goes from there, sure, as you know yourself.
Yeah, no, you're spot on as well. Like, I think it's all just about learning, really, isn't it? You kind of just learn as you go. Like, that's kind of how I found anyway. If you do something and maybe you listen back to it and you're like, geez, that didn't sound too good, well, I better make sure it's fixed for the next one. That's kind of how it is. And like
you have to try, don't you? I mean,
exactly. Like, you have to make that effort. If you're not going to try, then sure, what's the point?
And also roll the dice. I mean, I'd sometimes be like, should I do a program about that? Should I try that angle? Should I do this, that, and the other? And I just think, yeah, try it. And if it doesn't work, you don't have to try it again. But at least you, like, even sometimes I create imagery, and it might be, so for example, the NFL game Madden 22 came out a few months ago, and it was, I think on the cover, it was Patrick Mahomes and Tom Brady. And like, maybe it was the video game from EA Sports. And for the crack, I said, sure, I'll Photoshop myself and Michael Verney's heads onto Mahomes and Tom Brady and put it out there. And like, I don't know if people liked it or not, but I thought, this is a crack. It'll stand out a little bit. Then another week, Love Island was on. So I got a couple of like the promo images of the people that were on the show, and I put the two of our heads on it again. It's just a bit of crack. you want to put your personality out there. Not everyone's going to like it, but I just think you try stuff and you'll eventually stumble on what works, or you hope you will. And then the other thing is you obviously want to build up fan engagement, or viewer engagement. I'm not saying they're fans per se, but like if you can do that, then get that sense of a community, which I'm sure you're understanding too, with your channel there, GAA Fan TV. So that's just my thing of it, just to kind of build up the engagement and try stuff and see where it leads. Like I don't necessarily know, as I'm sure maybe you're in the same boat. You don't know where it'll lead to, but you just keep trying stuff and see where it goes.
Absolutely, yeah. Like you do it because you enjoy it, and you do it for, I suppose, the love of the game and the love of the hurling, the love of the football. Like and like what you said there before as well. Like it's, you know, it's good to put yourself out there, and I've had that as well sometimes as well, where you have an idea of a video, and sometimes you can have an idea of something that will work really well, and then it doesn't. You know, it can sometimes go the opposite way, or something you think, oh, you know, this probably won't do that well, and then it does unbelievably well, and you're like, Jesus, that's maybe I should start doing more of that. But it's mad kind of how things work. But like what you said before, like once you try, once you put it out there, I think that's the main thing.
Yeah, and sometimes something will work massively well one week. You'll do something similar the next week, and it'll tank. So you just don't know sometimes. And the thing with, like, if you were doing a podcast on, let's say, Liverpool FC, every single week you might have Liverpool fans watching. There's maybe 60 or 70 games a year. It's probably running for 10 months. Plus you've got transfer stuff during the summer. There's always something to go to talk about. And even when there's like the European Championships or World Cup, you could talk about those Liverpool players throughout that. Whereas with GAA, the season's all over the place. COVID affected GAA, even though it's outdoor sports and absolutely everyone should have been playing them throughout that. But anyway, that's a separate topic. Like GAA was hit really badly in terms of like COVID and games not being played. So that's disastrous for a channel and disastrous for talking about GAA. And then you've got kind of the split season, and you're like, okay, if I do a show this week, are people from Tipperary going to tune in when I'm talking massively about football in Longford or whatever? And then there might be nothing big happening in Tipperary for a couple of weeks. So you're thinking, how can I kind of drag those people in? So I'm talking about something particularly local with, let's say, Longford or Tyrone or something like that. But I want to do it where the people in those areas are like, yeah, that's very good analysis, but someone more nationally is also interested in it. So it's like, you're not just talking about Liverpool, where absolutely everyone is interested in talking about what's happened that week with, you know, Roberto Firmino, you know, if he scored a hat-trick or something like that. So it's a very different sort of a balancing act with GAA, which maybe is something that you've also experienced.
Absolutely, yeah. Like I suppose between January and May, I mean, it was there was literally nothing to speak about at all. It was kind of, you were trying to keep the channel active, but at the same time, you know, you were kind of running out of things to speak about, or you'd end up speaking about previous games, or, you know, just finding something to pass the time or something anyways. But I suppose for yourself, like, do you think that's a way forward, even for like in terms of journalism or digital journalism? Like that's kind of the way forward in terms of YouTube and social media. Like that seems to be kind of, because you've seen, like, even with YouTube channels, and I've even noticed this as well, like in soccer and maybe NFL as well. I'm not too sure. I don't watch too much NFL, but like those channels over there, and you've seen the success of them, and you've seen kind of how they've kind of risen up. So is that even something like you've kind of seen yourself?
Oh yeah, the rise of online is, well, like online shows being streamed and that sort of stuff is massive. Even like an NFL show that I don't watch it that much actually, because I find him a little bit annoying. But Pat McAfee, he used to be a kicker. I can't remember if he did field goals or punting, but anyway, in the NFL, and he has his show, and it kind of just from a standing start, because he's known nationally and he can get a studio broadcast or set up straight away. Like you could have like thousands of people watching in the one go, which is something in GAA is far less likely, because GAA is about local passion and local pride. People will tune in to watch stuff about their own county, and every county's only so big. And within Dublin, I would say most people, population wise in Dublin, aren't interested in GAA. So there are a huge amount of people involved in clubs, but there are probably, you know, how many people would you get to watch a live Dublin GAA show? Not quite as many as you'd think. So it's more difficult because everything is so dispersed. And like, as I said, you don't have that team followed by 10 million fans like you would over in New York or whatever, with the Giants or well, not the Jets, but the Giants, you know, when they were going good. So that, like, but the rise of online media and streaming shows and stuff like that, that's going nowhere. If anything, it's just going to accelerate. So hopefully for the likes of myself and yourself, it only means that we continue to build. But yeah, I definitely see that building all the while. But then, like, of course, the big problem then is it's one thing having subscribers, but channels have to have a way to monetize. So, you know, finding ways for, you know, obviously Patreon is there, but trying to find ways for the supporters to also look after the channel. I mean, that's not me with the hands out or whatever, but obviously people are going to be getting more used to paying for media from now on. There was a long period there where newspapers were free online. There's obviously these aggregator websites like, you know, hoganstand.com, who just take quotes out of every newspaper and throw them out. And like, media is a sort of a carnivorous sort of sector whereby everyone takes quotes off each other's papers. And, you know, column A in Independent, you will see quotes from that in another newspaper, because, you know, that's just the way it is. But I think in time, a lot of these sites will become subscription. It's already moving that way with the likes of the Examiner and the Independent and the Times. They have premium stuff all behind paywalls at the moment. But you know, it has to go that way ultimately. But that's not me complaining or whatever. That's just kind of the reality of where it's going. So, but definitely online isn't going anywhere. If anything, like, the TV channels are going to be the ones under pressure.
Absolutely, yeah. No, like, I completely get your point of view there. I suppose before we finish up, where can people find you then in terms of your social channels? Oh yeah, well, if you're following on Twitter at Shane Saint or at OurGame.HQ and OurGame.ie on Instagram, I think that's the handle, OurGame.ie. And obviously, if people could subscribe to the YouTube channel, that would be great as well. So OurGame, and you'll find it, no hassle at all. Perfect, Shane. Well, look, listen, I appreciate you jumping on anyways, and yeah, best of luck with the channel anyway moving forward. Yeah, and same to yourself with GAA Fan TV. Appreciate you having me on, Aaron.